Welcome to USQ Artsworx Artist Spotlight. Today, speaking to Matt Scholten. And Matt is a director, writer, producer, teacher. G'day, Matt. How you going?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. So, Matt, you're currently here as a guest director for Artsworx, and you're working with our acting students and on their next production, Tartuffe. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's talk about you as a director and as an educator. You're a Melbourne lad living up in the Gold Coast hinterland, working up in Toowoomba, and you're about to start a regional tour as well. How do you go about juggling all of that, the distance, the time, the work?
Very badly.
That's not the right answer.
No, I know it's not the right answer, but it's the truthful answer. I mean, it's the life of an artist, really, and particularly somebody who works in the performing arts, where you always look for opportunities. And so the opportunities that come to you are not necessarily going to be somewhere close to home, and particularly living in regional Queensland now for me, or up on the hinterland, up on the Gold Coast, it's not a place where I'm going to be able to commute 5 minutes and work. Melbourne is different, of course, because Melbourne has a really thriving theatre scene, and I was very lucky and fortunate to be a part of that for many years. But balance is a really important thing to actually take seriously, and so I'm just really grateful for the opportunities that come to me, and if it's something that I think is worthwhile, if it's a story worth telling, if it's an opportunity for me to learn and grow as an artist, I'll go to wherever the work takes me.
So I guess that leads us to, how did you become a guest director with USQ Artsworx?
In a strange way, as these things tend to be.
Stories.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how strange you'll find it, but it just kind of came through a phone call from Michael Smalley, who's one of the teachers over in the arts program, who wanted to speak to a playwright called Daniel Keane, who I work with quite a bit, and was having trouble getting hold of Daniel. So he somehow managed to get my details and called me, and through that conversation, I let him know that I was actually moving up to Queensland. And he said, because he's a really generous and friendly guy, he said, well, when you come up, it'd be great to actually meet you and come over and check out USQ. So I did. And I got to meet him, and I got to meet Scott Alderdice as well. And between the two of them, they were really, open to the idea of me doing some work here. And so they offered me an opportunity to come and actually direct, as well as speak at the ADSA conference that happened here in June.
Oh, cool. So that first opportunity to direct with the USQ Artsworx and with the acting students was the Strata? Lysistrata.
This is actually, we made a joke in the play about the pronunciation, because there actually are about 4 or 5 apparently correct ways to say that. So
that's probably a good thing for me.
No, well, we went with Lysistrata.
So tell us about that production. It was an interesting production, and you set it in a different era as well.
I did, yeah. It's so wonderful to have opportunities to do plays like that, because, again, it works from the classical era. You don't tend to get a chance to do them in the professional industry, mostly because of the size of the cast. This was a cast of 25 characters, wow. And that's just prohibitive for a commercial organisation like a theatre company. It was really so wonderful to come in, and also, on the other hand, quite terrifying, because it's a brand new environment for me. I'd never had any kind of contact with USQ before I came on the very first day and met the students. Apart from, chatting to Michael and Scott,
yeah.
Which was all very friendly and very kind of unbusinesslike. And then all of a sudden there you are on day one having to direct a play. But we had a great time with it, because we decided to really enjoy the craziness of the text and of the plot, and to really investigate these characters, and also to look at what Aristophanes was saying about war and about gender roles. So those things are still topics of conversation in 2016, as they should be. And we were really able to just kind of plumb the knowledge that the students had about those things, and then sort of throw it up against this classical text, and then have a great time in the comedy and the vulgarity and the sexual innuendo in the play. All of that stuff was really great fun to explore. So we had a wonderful time. And we set it in the late 60s, early 70s, because I think for a classical text, you need to find a context. Yeah. And for students particularly, for them something to kind of look toward and be inspired by. And so I set it in the Vietnam moratorium marches. Mm-hmm. And we also used the concept of them being a theatre troupe that actually really existed in Melbourne called the Australian Performing Group, who did street theatre and who did a lot of, intervention kind of work, agitprop, whatever you want to call it, to express their concerns about the war. And so it gave us a really wonderful kind of world to explore.
And how was that accepted by the audiences?
I think really well. I mean, I sat through the 3 performances and it's so lovely to sit in a room and hear laughter and to hear the kind of laughter that's almost a little bit kind of inappropriate or out of control. Yeah. And we had that with every show. We had that in rehearsal too. We had a great time making that piece of work. And, I felt, I'm always going to be slightly critical of my own work and my own ideas. That's just a natural thing that we all have, yeah. But just to see the audience and also just to watch the students, really step up and really take ownership and also in the performance of the piece, just understand what it's like to connect to an audience and to be so joyful. So it was a really profound experience for me, and it was a really great way to start working here, and I'll always treasure that one.
That's awesome. So now you've started production on your next USQ Theatre show.
Yes, they asked me back.
They ask you back. So obviously that first show was interesting. Yeah. And so Tartuffe.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about who's in it and what's it all about.
Well, wow. I would need an entire podcast to talk about that, but it's a comedy again. It's a satire of religious fanaticism in particular. And it's about a family who are very rich and who are kind of a bit stupid and a bit selfish. And they are, the head of the household is a guy called Ogon, and he has had something of a spiritual reawakening, if you like, and he's met this guru character called Tartuffe, who infiltrates his way into the household. And as far as Ogon is concerned, Tartuffe is the center of righteousness and beauty and religion. And in fact, he is a massive imposter who's just after his money, his wife, his daughter, and his house. And so the family come to realize that Tartuffe is actually not the nice guy that he pretends to be. And they spend the first sort of 4 acts of a 5-act play trying to convince the father that he's actually being duped by this criminal, really. And the father, of course, refuses to believe it until something is set up, and I won't give it away, but there's a great setup where Tartuffe is unmasked, if you like, as the great villain. And, hilarity ensues, and everybody kind of ends up getting what they want, which is what a comedy actually is about. It's about conflict, but unlike drama, in a comedy, you get what you want at the end of the play.
I'm gonna do a little spoiler to my next question here by saying that sounds like an 80s drama sitcom.
Well, funny you should mention that because, again, like
really
Strata, yeah, it does. I wanted to give the play a context, and I was thinking about, because the way that it's written, and it's written by a magnificent Australian playwright called Justin Fleming in an Australian vernacular with lots of Aussie slang and swearing and, great lines like "shut your crack" and that's one of my favourite lines of the whole play. Yeah, but it felt like it needed still to be quite heightened because it's quite mad, this play, and it needs to be played in a way that's kind of over the top and a bit. Unlike real life. And so immediately I thought, well, the 1980s had fantastic soap operas like Dynasty and Dallas. So we have decided, and we are now creating a piece of work that is an homage, I guess, to particularly those American primetime soap operas. So it has a look in terms of the set like an 80s, it's like an opulent 80s lounge room, I guess, you're being invited into. And, there's some incredible costumes being made, and we have a soundtrack that is, I think you may actually enjoy it as well, that arcs back to, when I was a teenager in the 80s myself, and is sometimes quite nice to hear again, and sometimes I just can't believe that song actually even exists. But, so we're having a lot of fun with recreating that world, and I just wanted it to be about stupid rich people, and immediately the idea of a soap opera came. So we're also kind of playing it quite broad. The characters are kind of aware that they're being watched by an audience. There's a lot of slapping. There's a lot of overreaction, and it's all because the piece is a comedy and is wildly funny, but needs to be played, I think, way over the top. I spoke to one of the original cast members who was in the first production at Bell Shakespeare, Kate Mulvaney, and she had 2 words for me, which were "go big."
Wow. So
I thought, I'm going to do that. That's what we're doing.
So have you directed works of Molière's before?
I've never directed Molière. No, my relationship with Molière is a strange one because I studied him at university like everybody did, but I kind of didn't really dig it. Like, I didn't really jump on it in the way that I jumped onto Shakespeare, for example, who I just revere. So to me, Molière was always somebody who I knew about, and I kind of had done some theory about him, and I knew his sort of stories, but I'd never really investigated a lot of the work. And so to now kind of be offered the opportunity to direct Tartuffe has been wonderful, because I've really learned how incredible he is. And so now I'm really kind of reading as much as I can and imagining possibly doing some more of that work in the future. But he's the French Shakespeare. Like in France, people study Molière in school, not Shakespeare.
Right.
And so he's incredibly revered in Europe, particularly. But to have the opportunity to do something like this that's so heightened and so funny and so also kind of relevant still, interestingly. Stupid rich people still exist. Donald Trump is one example I can think of straight away.
That's a can of worms.
Well, it is, but it needs to be dealt with. We can't wriggle away from it. We've got to deal with it. We have to accept that we are still in a world where, white patriarchal privilege exists, and this is exactly what Molière's making fun of. He's pointing at it and saying, do you understand that you're actually in the wrong? Do you understand that you're being duped? So, if nothing else, it feels right to be plumbing those things, and we're kind of using the 80s as a context, I guess, for stupidity. Yeah. But yeah,
when you're casting something like this, what do you look for in the actors to get to play?
It's different with student actors than with professional actors. I'm not a great fan of auditioning. I feel like in an audition you get the version of the person that they want to show you. You're on your best behaviour. And so is the director really as well. Yeah. So I prefer in the outside world to actually like go for a walk with someone or meet them at an art gallery, if they're happy to do that, and talk, as opposed to kind of get them to perform something for me, because I'm also quite I like the collaborative nature of theatre, and I don't really I understand that there are hierarchies and there are points in the process where I need to make decisions because I'm the director, but I prefer to be much more on a even playing field with actors and with designers, with everybody really. But in casting this, I had seen the third year actors in Othello that Scott directed, and I couldn't help. I saw that show 3 times. So the first time I went, I was good. I just went and watched the show and didn't sort of think too much about what else was happening. But literally the day after the opening night, they asked me to come back and do Tartuffe. And so I went in the second night realizing that I was watching a group of actors who I was potentially going to work with. And so I started to kind of look for little clues in them.
Yep.
And I didn't really get a chance to talk to them very much. I mean, I would say hello in the corridor and stuff, but they're crazy busy, and I didn't want to kind of be too intrusive on their time. But I just kind of went with my gut feeling with them after seeing them, and I spoke to the other teachers, of course. But I went with my gut feeling, which has always been the best thing for me to do. And I was right. And when I showed the cast list to the other staff, they just gave it a tick straight away, and they were really pleased with what I'd come up with. And so, I look for somebody who can be spontaneous and who can be responsible and who can be serious about the work and at the same time enjoy it and kind of get a really huge buzz and excitement out of just working with this beautiful language and working with these other actors. So, yeah.
So that's Tartuffe playing at Artsworx Thursday the 15th and Friday the 16th of September. We'll get back to details on booking tickets about that soon. But I just want to touch really briefly, Matt, on your theatre company, If Theatre, has been recently nominated for a Helpman Award. And that's a huge thing in this country, definitely. And that was for the Mother, starring Noni Hazelhurst. So tell us a little bit about that accomplishment. Just being nominated for Helpman is fantastic.
Yeah, it was kind of a real surprise. And we were nominated for 2. Noni had a nomination as Best Performance by a Female Actor, which is her first Helpman nomination in a 45-year career. And she's done... people think of her as being a television and film actress, but she's done a significant amount of theatre in her time as well. Yeah. So that was very exciting to be part of that. And also the production was nominated as Best Regional Touring Production. And so that for me was a really lovely nomination to get because firstly it was for the whole show. So it was for everybody. The playwright, Daniel Keane, the actress, Noni Hazelhurst, myself, the design team, our tireless stage manager is the hardest working girl in showbiz. And for it to come rather from regional theatre companies who were the people who would nominate us, that for me was a huge tick because it was a really lovely thing that they recognised the play. And having lived regionally myself a lot of my life and having worked as well in regional contexts and continuing to do so, it was just really great to be in that room with that company of people. And so, yeah, we really enjoyed it, and we all went down to the ceremony, and it was very showbiz, of course. But at the same time, it was just I made sure that I took the time out, and my partner actually made me do this. He said to me, just like take this in because you're sitting in a room of people who are at the top of their game. And for that night, I was one of them. And so it was just lovely to be there. And we shared it with, some fantastic small to medium companies. Like Shake and Stir is the local example. And we sat next to them and we had a tremendous night with them. Awesome. And we've sort of reached out to each other now too. So there's networks developing there. But, to be an artist in this country and to be living in a country where the federal government doesn't even have an arts policy. Can I just say that again? The federal government does not have an arts policy. And so to be an artist of any form in this country, whether it's theatre, music, visual arts, writing, whatever it is,
it's extreme.
We've never been more vulnerable. Yeah. And I think that we have to recognise that as a community, and we do. But it just seems to be falling on deaf ears. So again, getting back to the Helpman thing, just to have our little show that we rehearsed in our kitchen and in our backyard and in a small school hall to go up against big companies like QTC and MTC and Griffin and, even like ATYP and the Sydney Dance Company who were all part of the same nomination with Shake and Stir for Best Regional Production was just a real endorsement and also a real pick-me-up for me to say, well, it is worth pursuing this. It is worth persevering. It is worth a lot. And so that was great. So we're off on tour again. And
Mother will be playing at the Empire Theatre in Toowoomba, Saturday, October 22nd. Tickets are available at empiretheatre.com.au. And Tartuffe, again, Thursday the 15th, Friday the 16th of September. Tickets are available from artsworx.com.au. Matt Scholten, Guest Director for Artsworx, thank you very much for your time and good luck with Tartuffe.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.